Pre-authorized transfer, pre-authorized electronic funds transfer from a consumer account may be authorized by the consumer only in writing. So all this getting on the phone and everybody keep getting on the phone. Everybody want to keep getting on the phone, walking in, trying to walk in the bank with documents. In writing, you got to put it in writing. You got to put it in writing. You got to understand what you're doing. And you got to be able to know how to authorize those transfers to be transferred and to be credited by the bank, allowing those credits to be credited to that other institution drawn against your account once you understand what's actually happening. So a pre-authorized electronic funds transfer. So you got to pre-authorize those transfers, right, to your account. May be authorized by the consumer only in writing, and a copy of such authorization shall be provided to the consumer when made, right? A consumer may stop payment of a pre-authorized electronic funds transfer by notifying the financial institution orally or in writing at any time up to 3 business days preceding the scheduled date of the transfer. The financial institution may require written confirmation to be provided to it within 14 days of the oral notification if, right, when the oral notification is made, the consumer is advised of such requirements and the address to which such confirmation should be sent. In the case of a pre-authorized transfer from a consumer account to the same person, which may vary in amounts, the financial institution or designated payee shall, prior to each transfer, provide reasonable evidence notice to the consumer in accordance with the regulations of the Bureau of the amount to be transferred and the scheduled date of the transfer. So it's like when you're dealing with a bank and then that bank, you giving that bank the right to transfer from your account, and it's the same bank that you're actually doing business with, right? And the notice of errors, right? You got to know what's going on in order to give notification of an error. So a notification to a financial institution of an error, if a financial institution within 6 days after having transmitted to a consumer documentation pursuant to this section 09 AC or D, or notification pursuant to section 906B receives oral written notice in which the consumer sets forth otherwise enables the financial institution to identify the name and account number of the consumer, indicates the consumer believe that the documentation or in the case of notification pursuant to 906B, the consumer account contains an error and the amount of such error, and set forth the reason for the consumer's belief where applicable that the error has occurred, right? The financial institution shall investigate the alleged error, determine whether an error has occurred, and report or mail the results of such investigation, and determine to be the determination to the consumer within 10 business days. The financial institution may require written confirmation to be provided to it within 10 business days of an oral notification of error. When the oral notification is made, the consumer is advised of such requirements and the address to which such confirmation should be sent. A financial institution which requires written confirmation in accordance with the previous sentence needs not provisional recredit a consumer account in accordance with subsection C. Not shall the financial institution be liable under subsection E if a written confirmation is not received in 10 days period referred to in the previous sentence. So whenever you know that an error has occurred, you got to, give them notification, all right? But anytime you setting up electronic funds transfers to take place, you got to actually give the bank written notice in advance, right? And when you're correcting errors, it has to be 14 days, right? So like I said, it's a lot of stuff. I'm not going to go into everything that it talks about in the errors. We're going to go to the consumer's liability. unauthorized electronic funds transfers. A consumer shall be liable for any unauthorized electronic funds transfer involving the account of such consumer, only if the card or other means of access utilized for such transfer was an accepted card, and other means of access, and if the issuer of such card code or other means of access has provided a means whereby the user of such card code or other means of access can be identified as the person authorized to use it, such as by signature, photograph, or other fingerprint, or by electronic or mechanical confirmation. In no event, however, shall the consumer liability for an unauthorized transfer exceed the lesser of $50, or the amount of money or value of property or services obtained in such unauthorized electronic funds transfer prior to the time of the financial institution is notified of, or otherwise becomes aware of the circumstances which led to the reasonable belief that the unauthorized electronic funds transfer involved the consumer's account has been or may be affected. Notice under this paragraph is sufficient when such steps have been taken as may be reasonably required in the ordinary course of business to provide the financial institution with the pertinent information, whether or not any particular officer, employee, or agent of the financial institution does in fact receive such information. So it's just talking about the liability of anybody, if your liability in reference to if somebody used the card, then your burden of proving that what you're saying is true and all that pretty much stuff you should already know, right? Now, liability of a financial institution. Action of failure to act proximately causing damages, right? Subject to subsection B and C, a financial institution shall be liable to the consumer for all damages proximately caused by. All right, so now these are all the things that the bank is liable for. The financial institution failure to make an electronic funds transfer in accordance with the terms and the conditions of an account in the correct amount or in a timely manner when properly instructed to do so by the consumer, except where the consumer account has insufficient funds. Now, let me ask you this. Why would your account have insufficient funds? If you issue currency to the bank and you have not demanded payment of the currency, that's the only way your account can be insufficient. If you've already issued a promissory note to the bank, you should never have insufficient funds. If you got insufficient funds and you issued a note to the bank, then that means you haven't claimed your rights on the note yet. So that's why they're saying insufficient funds. So that would be the only thing that would stop them from doing an EFT or any type of transfer that you authorize, is if the account has insufficient funds. So that's something that you must understand too. All right, the funds are subject to a legal process or other encumbrance restricting such transfer. See, can't have no encumbrance on your account, can't have no restrictions. Such transfer will exceed the established credit limit, and electronic terminal has insufficient cash to complete the transaction or as otherwise provided in regulations of the Bureau, right? An electronic terminal has insufficient cash to complete the transfer or as otherwise provided in the regulations of the Bureau, the financial institution failed to make an electronic funds transfer due to insufficient funds when the financial institution has failed to credit in accordance with the terms and conditions of an account. a deposit of funds to the consumer account, which have been provided sufficient funds to make the transfer. Now, I should not have to explain that, but being that some people need just a little bit extra care, I'm going to explain it. And it's kind of like what I just told you. So it says the financial institution's failure to make an electronic funds transfer. So why is it, ask yourself this, why is it paying so much attention to the failure of the bank to do an electronic transfer? Now it says that anything that the consumer authorizes in writing, the bank is supposed to do it. That's what it read up top. Let us go up to the top and we're gonna come back down real quick. I want you to get this, right? Because if you get it, you understand what I'm trying to show you, right? So right here at the top, it says the liability of a financial institution is this subsection. And at the very top, number 1, it says the financial institution's failure to make an electronic funds transfer in accordance with the terms and the conditions of an account. So whenever you give them the authorization to do something on behalf of your account, I want you to get it in the correct amount or in a timely manner when properly instructed to do so by the consumer. So it's letting you know that the consumer, if the consumer say do this and he give you the correct stuff, all right, except where the consumer account has insufficient funds, right? Now let's go down here, because that's an oxymoron for your account to not have funds when you just issue currency to open the account up. Now let's go down. Because Brother Isaiah, I'm gonna help you out today. We're gonna get it all straightened out for you. Get it all straightened out for you. Well, I think I passed it up. May have passed it up. Yeah. All right, so right here, number 2. Now it says the financial institution's failure to make an electronic funds transfer due to insufficient funds. All right. So whenever they tell you that they can't do it due to insufficient funds, now this is why I'm trying to tell you, like, the world is yours. If you could just put your mind around what I'm showing you, boy, you can live that life. I'm trying to tell you. Now, the financial institution's failure to make an electronic funds transfer due to insufficient funds. All right, we're going to act like this part didn't exist. Now, when the financial institution failed to credit, wait a minute. So the financial institution's failure to make an electronic funds transfer due to insufficient funds when the financial institution failed to credit that deposit. So what it's saying is, how in the hell could they say insufficient funds if you made an electronic deposit against the account and all deposits are covered by insurance? So if they fail to make the credit for the deposit that you made electronically, then who's really in error here? Is it really you in error, or is it really them and that's in error? And who must have this knowledge to know to hold who accountable? Because according to what I'm reading, it's saying that the financial institution's failure to make an electronic funds transfer due to insufficient funds when the financial institution failed to credit, because they should have credited that deposit. Even if it was electronic, it was a deposit which was covered by insurance for the consumer's benefit in accordance with the terms and the conditions of the account. What kind of account is it? It's a depository insurance account. So according to the terms of the account, if I make an electronic deposit, is that covered by electronic? I believe it is. I believe it is. So when you got this type of knowledge, you can hold these people accountable for the things that they're not doing in accordance to the agreement. A lot of this stuff, y'all being able to use the debits, the credit cards and stuff like how you want to use it is all becoming your ability to understand what you're doing and what's actually happening, and your rights to secure yourself in anything you're doing. All right. So in accordance to the terms and the conditions of an account, it says a deposit of funds to a consumer account, right? So whenever you make a deposit, whether it's electronically or it's by paper or anything, any deposit to a consumer's account, which would have provided sufficient funds. Why would the deposit to your account provide sufficient funds? Because every debit is also a credit. So any deposit to your account, which would have provided sufficient funds. If you wrote a check to T-Mobile and they deposited that check in T-Mobile Bank against your bank account, once your bank received that deposit, they were supposed to cover it with the insurance. So how could they say return check or insufficient funds on an insured account? On an insured account, yo. On an insured account. You got to get it, yo. You got to get it. And once you get it, you'll be able to make wonders happen, right? Now, a deposit of funds to a consumer account which would have provided sufficient funds to make the transfer, and the financial institution's failure to stop payment of a pre-authorized transfer from a consumer account when instructed to do so in accordance with the terms and the conditions of the account. So it tell you right there, if you wrote them and told them to do something, they ain't do it, yo. Yeah, you sitting up here talking about some, man, I got to figure out how to pay my mortgage. I got to write the damn bank and tell them what you want them to do. Give them all the account information and tell I want you to do an electronic funds transfer. And I want you to draw it against my checkers account, which is account number such and such, and the routing number of this bank. And I want you to pay by EFT. You can give them instructions like that. Did you know that? Oh, you didn't know that. That's what it was. You didn't know you could give them instructions. You can tell them what you want them to do. Oh, but now you know you can give the bank instructions. Yes. You tell the bank what you want it to do. All right. So the acts of gods and technical malfunctions, only the same, basically the only thing that they excuse from is if it's an act of God and ain't nothing they can really too much do about it, you know. So now we're getting down to the card, right? All right, so insurance of cars and other means of assets. Forbidden proper insurance. No person may issue a consumer any card code or other means of access to such consumer account for the purpose of initiating an electronic funds transfer other than in response to a request or an application thereof, and as a renewal of or in substitution for an accepted code card or card code or other means of access, whether issued by the initial issuer or a successor. Exceptions, notwithstanding the provisions of subsection A person may distribute to the consumer on an unsolicited basis a card code or other means of access for the use in initiating an electronic funds transfer from the such consumer's account if such card code or other means of asset is not valid, right? Such distribution is accompanied by a complete disclosure in accordance with section 905 of the consumer's rights and liabilities, which will apply if such card code or other means of access is validated. All right, so let me read that again. So just in case you ain't get it. Notwithstanding the provisions of subsection A person may distribute to a consumer on an unsolicited basis a card, code, or other means of access for use in initiating the electronic funds transfer from the consumer account if such card, code, or other means of access is not validated. Such distribution is accompanied by a complete disclosure in accordance with section 905 of the consumer's rights and liability, which will apply if such card, code, or other means of access is validated. Such distribution is accompanied by a clear explanation in accordance with the regulations of the Bureau that the card, code, or other means of access is not validated, and now the consumer may dispose of such card, code, or other means of access if validation is not desired, and such card code or other means of access is validated only in response to the request or application from the consumer upon verification of the consumer's identity for the purposes of subsection B. A card code or other means of